The United Nations is investigating possible sanctions violations by North Korea. According to a new report, Pyongyang is using sophisticated technology to sell coal and buy oil through ship-to-ship transfers. They are also committing cyber attacks involving cryptocurrencies and leaving nuclear and missile programs intact. The news comes after President Trump walked away from talks with Kim Jong-un without a deal for the country to denuclearize. Neil Bhatiya is an associate fellow at the Center for a New American Securities Energy, Economics, and Security Program. He joins us now from Washington. Neil, thanks so much for being with us. Some of these accusations are pretty brazen. What stood out to you the most?
Well, I think three things. You mentioned the ship-to-ship transfers, and really the scale and pace of those transfers has only accelerated. The UN has been warning about this for several years, but North Korea still has a vast armada of ships at its disposal to either get coal out of the country or bring in refined fuels from the country, and they are increasingly hard to detect. The second, another one that you mentioned, is the cyber hacking. We saw with the Sony hack and the WannaCry attack that their capabilities in this area are quite sophisticated, and the report pretty exhaustively documents the skill with which they've been able to steal, over the course of only a couple of years, hundreds of millions of dollars, not only in traditional currency through normal bank channels, but also the cryptocurrencies. They're big fans of Bitcoin. They use it to turn cash, to transfer it overseas, and there's currently no real international regulatory framework to deal with it. And the last I'd say is that despite repeated warnings, again, by the UN, North Korean diplomats still act as part of these networks to raise money for the regime, to acquire goods abroad in violation of UN Security Council regulations, and no one seems to be doing anything about that.
Well, and how is North Korea able to get away with these moves?
They've become quite good at forming close relationships with criminal networks throughout East Asia. They take advantage of jurisdictions with poor rule of law or where the political will is not there to push back against involvement with North Korea. There are many sub-Saharan African countries, for example, that have paid for North Korean construction firms to operate there. They've used North Korean labor to build statues in honor of their leaders. There's really no international consensus beyond the P5 that these activities need a much more concerted pushback.
Well, what kind of action could the UN take to crack down on this?
There are a couple things. For one, there's still too many UN member states that can't translate the UN sanctions designations, many of which are listed in this report, into their own national laws and frameworks. And it's incumbent on more advanced member states like the United States, Great Britain, France, to push this effort into high-risk jurisdictions. The second is the United States on its own, which of course has its own primary sanctions authorities against North Korea, could step up the pace of enforcement. It could work with places like Singapore, Malaysia, and Hong Kong, Taiwan, where we know these networks operate, where they create front companies, work with those authorities and those jurisdictions to tighten their own controls.
Well, what does this mean for U.S. relations with Pyongyang?
Well, I think it really shows how bad the deal was that Trump walked away from in Hanoi would have been. The idea that North Korea would have taken a modest denuclearization step in exchange for complete sanctions relief seemed quite far-fetched then. It seems patently ridiculous now, considering the depth and breadth of the sanctions violations that are listed in this report. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on the administration. You know, they've made the argument that their current strategy, they can get big for big, complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula in exchange for eventual sanctions relief. I think if you were sitting in Pyongyang right now, you think, you know, I'm pretty good at getting the goods and materials and resources I need. Maybe I can play a much longer game than the Trump administration can, augment my capabilities, continue to evade sanctions, and see what happens in the future.
Yeah, we know that North Korea has done that certainly in the past, playing that long game. Neil Bhatiya, thank you very much, Neil.
Thank you.